I pulled into my driveway like it was any other morning. The sun was just hitting the rooftops, birds were chirping, and then I saw it. Karen's massive black SUV perfectly parked behind my car, blocking me in like some kind of vehicular prison. My stomach sank, not because of the car, but because of who was sitting in it. Karen, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched like she was about to give a TED talk on neighborhood tyranny, and she was smirking. I stepped out, waving politely. "Hey, good morning, Karen, mind moving your car?" She didn't even blink, she just gave me that I am the law stare that says, "You are completely at my mercy, peasant." I tried again, louder this time. "Karen, seriously, I need to get out." She pretended not to hear me, scrolling on her phone like she was reading the next great HOA manifesto. I felt my jaw tighten. 10 minutes passed, then 20. My plans, my schedule, my entire morning, trapped behind a vehicle powered by pure pettiness. I walked up to the window and knocked. She rolled it down halfway like I just asked her for a cup of sugar instead of freedom. "You know, technically this is considered a restricted parking," she said, voice dripping with smug authority. I blinked. "Restricted parking?" I asked, trying not to laugh. "It's my driveway, I live here, you're blocking me." Her lips curled into a smile so fake it could have been patented. "Rules are rules," she said. Then, just like that, she rolled the window up, and there I was, stuck. I took a deep breath, packing in my driveway. My mind was racing. "Okay, don't panic, just think." I peeked over at the neighbors. Some were quietly observing from their windows, others sipping coffee, clearly enjoying the show. I swear I could hear them whispering, "Oh, this is going to get good." I tried calling a friend. "Yeah, Karen's blocking me again. No, I'm not exaggerating. She's literally sitting there like a queen on a throne, refusing to budge." My friend laughed. "Have you tried diplomacy?" I almost slammed the phone down. Diplomacy? With Karen, she could write a rulebook about rules that don't make sense and still think she's doing you a favor. This wasn't diplomacy territory, this was war. Time crawled forward like molasses, every honk of my horn, every wave, every pleading glance ignored, and it was obvious she loved it. I could feel her satisfaction radiating from the car like heat waves off asphalt. My stomach twisted. I wanted to shout, cry, maybe even negotiate, but none of it would work. She had one goal: to make me late, frustrated, and miserable. And right now, she was winning. I leaned against my car, thinking furiously. There has to be a way, a loophole, something the HOA can't ignore. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just react. I had to plan, carefully, strategically, and maybe, just maybe, I could turn this ridiculous situation into something beautiful. As the minutes dragged on, I started to notice small details. The way her foot tapped impatiently inside the car, the way she checked her phone every 30 seconds as if measuring my suffering. Every single movement was calculated. And that's when I knew, if I wanted to get out of this driveway alive, I wasn't just going to move her car, I was going to make sure she remembered this day forever. I stepped back, took a deep breath, and said to myself, "All right, Karen, you've made your move, now it's my turn." I thought maybe reason could work. Maybe if I spoke calmly, politely, like a normal human being, Karen would see the absurdity of blocking someone's driveway. I was wrong. I walked up to her car, trying to sound casual. "Karen, come on, it's just my car, I live here, can you move it for a few minutes?" She looked at me like I had just asked her to hand over the Declaration of Independence. "Do you even know the rules?" she said, voice sharp as a gavel. "You can't just." I cut in, trying to stay calm. "Karen, it's literally my driveway, you're blocking me, that's the rule you should be enforcing." She squinted at me, lips pursed, clearly offended that I would dare to speak to her like that. "Rules are rules. If you had parked in the designated area, this wouldn't happen." I blinked. "Designated area? Karen, I live here. This is my driveway. There's nowhere else for me to park." She leaned back, folding her arms. Excuses, excuses. Honestly, some people just don't respect the HOA. I swallowed a laugh. Respect the HOA? She had a clipboard, a smile, and apparently a lifetime subscription to petty tyranny. Meanwhile, my schedule, shredded, my patience, evaporating like morning dew. I turned, hoping a little neighborly sympathy might save me. I saw Mr. Thompson next door, peering out of his blinds with wide eyes. Mrs. Ramirez in the corner house was sipping coffee, muttering under her breath, and the Johnson kids were filming the whole thing on their phones. Great. Now I was the star of the cul-de-sac showdown. I tried calling the HOA. Maybe someone higher up could intervene. Maybe someone with an ounce of sense could tell Karen that blocking a driveway was not exactly the pinnacle of leadership. But of course the HOA line was busy. Busy with other people being oppressed by Karen, no doubt. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. I paced, checking my phone, pretending to text, hoping Karen would get bored and leave. She didn't, she just sat there looking like a queen inspecting peasants. Every once in a while, she'd glance at me, then check her phone, then glance again just to make sure I was fully aware of her dominance. I tried humor next, thinking maybe laughing at the absurdity would break the tension. "Hey, Karen, want me to bring out a tent? I might be here a while." She didn't even crack a smile, not even a twitch. I realized then that humor was powerless here. Diplomacy, pleading, humor, none of it worked. I was trapped and she was thriving on it. And that's when the first hint of panic crept in. My appointments, my errands, my life, it wasn't going to wait. I checked my watch. Lunch missed, calls missed, my patience non-existent. But in that panic, a tiny spark of clarity flickered. If diplomacy didn't work, I needed a plan that she couldn't ignore. I stepped back, watching her from a distance. Her smug expression, the way she casually scrolled on her phone, the faint smirk as neighbors whispered and watched, it was perfect. And then it hit me, there's always a rule Karen can't cheat. There's always a loophole. And maybe, just maybe, that loophole was about to become the most satisfying moment of my life. I clenched my fists, my mind raced. Tow trucks, cameras, HOA paperwork, I didn't know what it would be yet. All I knew was that I wasn't leaving until I had a plan that would finally teach Karen a lesson she would never forget. And just like that, the first seeds of payback were planted. By the time part 2 ended, I had tried everything short of hearing a marching band to blast music in Karen's driveway. But the more I tried, the more stubborn she became, and now the desperation was kicking in. I stared at my trapped car like it was sinking into quicksand. I checked my phone, missed calls, missed messages, missed opportunities. My entire day was slipping through my fingers because one woman decided the world needed her personal brand of chaos at 8 in the morning. I took a deep breath, trying not to scream. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "Think, just think." But thinking was hard when Karen kept glancing at me through her tinted window every 30 seconds like she was monitoring a zoo animal. Every time our eyes met, she gave this tiny, microscopic smirk. The kind of smirk that said, "I know you're trapped, and I'm enjoying every second of it." I wanted to throw a rock, or myself, but mostly a rock. I tried another honk, hoping maybe, just maybe, it would trigger some rare form of compassion inside her. Nope, she didn't even flinch. It was like honking gave her power. I swear I saw her posture straighten. At one point, I even waved politely, as if this time the international language of waving might warm her icy HOA heart. Instead, she cracked her window just enough to talk without inhaling my oxygen. "Honking is actually against Section 4 of the noise." "Karen," I interrupted, "my whole day is falling apart." "That," she said, "is not my jurisdiction." She rolled her window up, slowly, deliberately, like she was ending a movie scene. I felt the last strand of my patience snap. I dragged my hands down my face and looked around for help. The neighbors, of course, were no help at all. Oh, they were present, very present, but they weren't helping. Mr. Thompson was now fully outside, leaning on his mailbox like he was watching the season finale of his favorite drama. The Johnson kids had switched from phones to an iPad for better video quality. Even Mrs. Ramirez was on her porch with a snack now. Was that popcorn? Yes, popcorn. My misery was her morning entertainment. "Glad you're all having fun," I muttered. I checked my schedule again, as if the universe might magically give me back the hours I'd lost. Spoiler, it didn't. In a moment of absolute desperation, I even tried circling around to Karen's passenger side window. Maybe a new angle would force her to understand basic human decency. But she locked the doors like I was trying to rob her, and me, the guy who just wanted to leave his own driveway. That's when the panic really hit me. What if she stayed there all day? What if this was her new thing? What if every morning from now on, I woke up to a giant SUV blocking my freedom? My heart raced, my palms sweated, my breathing got shallow. "This is insane," I whispered. "This is literally insane." I sat on my front steps, head in my hands, staring at the ground. I could hear Karen's engine running softly. I could hear neighbors whispering. I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears like war drums. Then out of nowhere, I actually started laughing. Not because anything was funny. Oh no, it was that kind of laugh you get right before you lose your mind. The unhinged kind. "What now?" I said to myself, wiping my face. "Beg, cry, sleep in the driveway until she leaves." I looked back at her SUV, its size, its weight, its smugness. And then my eyes drifted to her license plate, that little piece of metal that held the key to her worst nightmare. That's when something shifted inside me. A spark. A tiny spark of hope, no, not hope. Revenge. A sudden electric idea flickered through my mind. Not a full plan yet, not even a half plan. but something was there, brewing quietly like a storm building over the mountains. If I wanted to survive HOA Karen's reign of terror, I needed something stronger than patience, something stronger than diplomacy, something she couldn't manipulate or intimidate. A loophole. A rule. A powerful, beautifully legal rules. And if I could find it, if I could use it, her entire plan to trap me here would explode in her face. My breathing steadied, my frustration melted, my despair transformed. Because for the first time that day, I didn't feel trapped. I felt dangerous. I stood up slowly, staring at her SUV like it was prey. She noticed. For the first time, her confident posture shifted just slightly, like she could sense something was changing. And she was right. Because I had a plan forming. And Karen, she wasn't ready. Not even close. I don't know what flipped inside me, but the moment I stood up and stared at Karen's SUV, something in the air changed. Not outside, inside me. The desperation that had been crushing my chest all morning suddenly turned into a strange, calm confidence. The kind of confidence you get when you realize you're done losing. Karen sensed it. I saw her shift in her seat. Her sunglasses tilted down just a little, like she was trying to figure out what I had just discovered. But I didn't move. I just stood there, arms folded, staring at her parking masterpiece like a detective studying a crime scene. And then the idea came. Not loud, not sudden, but slow, quiet, delicious. A tow truck. I almost laughed out loud. A tow truck. The universe itself whispered it into my brain like a divine revelation. And the best part, it wasn't illegal, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even petty. It was perfectly, beautifully justified. Because rule number 14 of our HOA handbook said, no vehicle may block a resident's driveway under any circumstances, tow-away zone. I knew that rule, everyone knew that rule. Karen practically tattooed that rule on her forehead every meeting. And right now, Karen's giant SUV was doing exactly that, blocking my driveway. Which meant she had broken her own favorite rules. My smile must have betrayed me because I saw Karen straighten up. She lowered her sunglasses all the way this time, trying to read my face like it was a classified document. I didn't give her anything, I just walked slowly into my house, calm, controlled, like a man with a plan. The moment the door closed behind me, I bolted to the kitchen counter and grabbed the HOA handbook. I flipped through the pages like a mad scientist, searching for the formula to destroy humanity. And there it was. Tow-away clause. Bold, beautiful, legally unstoppable. I tapped the page with my finger like a drumbeat. Karen, I whispered, you're about to experience justice with a hydraulic winch. My hands shook not from fear but from excitement. The idea wasn't fully formed yet, but it was alive, and it was perfect. I paced my living room, imagining every scenario. What if she moved her car before the tow truck arrived? What if she called her HOA allies and blocked the tow? What if she pulled out some made-up rule from 1983? I shook my head, no, not this time. This plan needed precision. It needed timing. It needed to hit her ego where it hurt, the rules. I peeked through my blinds. She was still there, still sitting, still smirking. But now, she had no idea what was coming. I opened my phone and started searching tow companies nearby. My thumb hovered over the first number. My heart thumped. This was it, the moment everything shifted. But something stopped me. Not fear. A strategy. If I called now and she saw me making the call, she might panic and drive away. Then I'd lose my only chance for justice. No, I needed to call in secret. I needed to make sure the truck arrived before she even sensed danger. I needed silence. I stepped outside casually and sat on my porch like a man embracing defeat. I even pretended to sigh dramatically, letting Karen think she had won. I saw her shoulders relax. She leaned back in her seat, full smug mode activated. Perfect. Let her think victory is hers. Because victory was about to get towed. I pretended to text, but in reality I quietly opened my keypad and typed the number of a local tow company. My thumb hovered over call, my pulse banging like drums in my ears. One press and everything would change. But this needed to be flawless. I whispered under my breath, let's make this worth every second you wasted from my day, Karen. I took a deep breath, pressed the call button, and lowered my voice. "Hello," I said as calmly as possible. "I need a vehicle removed immediately. It's blocking my driveway. HOA violation, completely illegal." My voice was steady. My heart was chaos. As the dispatcher asked for details, I saw Karen glance my way. She tilted her head, suspicious but unsure. I smiled politely at her, innocent, harmless, defeated. She fell for it. Hook, line, and SUV. When I hung up the phone, I felt my entire soul light up, not because revenge was coming, but because it was righteous. Legal. Perfect. I leaned back on my porch chair, watching Karen sit in her car like a queen oblivious to the incoming rebellion. And for the first time all morning, I felt in control. I didn't think Karen could get any worse. Honestly, I thought the woman had reached the peak of her villain career. But nope. She woke up the next morning and chose championship-level chaos. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee, enjoying the only peaceful 5 minutes our neighborhood ever had, when I heard it. A loud beep. Not a normal beep. Not a car beep. This one had rage. This one had purpose. This one had Karen written all over it. I set my mug down and walked toward the street. And there she was. Karen stood in the middle of the cul-de-sac with a clipboard like she was surveying her new kingdom. The kingdom she did not own. The kingdom she did not run. The kingdom she desperately wished she controlled. She spotted me and pointed her pen like a weapon. "There you are," she snapped. "You need to come with me immediately." I blinked. Why would I do that? "Because you caused a disturbance last night," she said, lips pursed tight, "and as acting HOA president." "You're not acting HOA president," I reminded her. "For that to happen, we would need an actual HOA." She ignored me, of course. Karen's greatest strength was pretending reality did not exist. She held up a photo on her phone. It was a screenshot of my car being towed from my own driveway the night before. "You see this," she said smugly, "evidence." "Evidence of what?" I asked, crossing my arms. "That you abused HOA services," she replied. I let out a laugh so loud the neighbor across the street peeked through her blinds. "Karen, you called the tow truck," I reminded her. She didn't even blink. That's not how I remember it. Before I could respond, I noticed something behind her, something she was clearly hiding. A stack of orange violation notices tucked into a box on the sidewalk. My heart dropped. "Oh no," I muttered. "What did you do?" Karen stepped aside proudly, like she had just unveiled a statue of herself. She flipped through the notices, each one already filled out, each one with my house number printed on top. Improper driveway slope. Unauthorized bird feeder. Mailbox emotionally distressed. Grass exhibiting negative attitude. I'm not kidding, she actually wrote that. "Karen," I said slowly, "these aren't real violations." She raised a brow. "They are if I say they are." I stared at her for a moment. This wasn't just petty. This was a possession. She was trying to bury me under fake rules she invented in her sleep, probably after dreaming of writing people fines for breathing too loudly. As she handed me the stack, she whispered, "You brought this on yourself." And that was the moment everything snapped. Not in an angry, break things kind of way. No, in a calm, terrifyingly clear way. If she wanted to escalate, I could escalate too. But smarter. Cleaner. Quieter. I looked down at the stack of fake violations, then back at her, and I smiled. "Thank you," I said. She looked suspicious. "Yours thanking me." "Of course," I replied, "these are extremely useful." She froze. "Useful for what?" "Oh, nothing you need to worry about," I said cheerfully, "but you'll find out very soon." Karen didn't like that answer. She narrowed her eyes, trying to decode whether I meant revenge or repentance. Spoiler, it was revenge. But not the kind she could stop. Not the kind she could preempt. This was the type of revenge people tell their friends about for years. She finally turned around and strutted back toward her house, clipboard swinging, sandals slapping against the pavement like angry applause. The moment she disappeared inside, I walked straight to my garage. I grabbed the big box from the top shelf, the one labeled just in case. Inside it were a binder, a printed documents, a receipt, emails, a screenshots, a dates, times, witness statements, everything Karen had ever done to the neighborhoods, every illegal action, every fake rule, every time she harassed someone, every time she pretended to be in charge. All perfectly organized, all perfectly stored. Because I always knew a day like this would come. And now that she had given me a stack of fake violations, I had exactly what I needed. I looked at that binder and whispered, Karen, this is checkmate. And readers, you won't believe what happened next. Because the moment I made one phone call, Karen's entire imaginary empire started to collapse. I knew the moment had come. The moment where hours of frustration, pettiness, and ridiculousness would collide. I picked up my phone with deliberate calm, like a man about to release a storm. One quick call later, I heard the familiar roar of a tow truck engine. My pulse spiked, not with fear but anticipation. Karen had no idea what was coming. Not even close. I stepped onto my porch and casually sipped my coffee, letting the world think I had given up. Karen, of course, noticed. She tilted her head suspiciously, narrowed her eyes, and tapped her clipboard like she was about to launch a preemptive strike. Then the tow truck pulled into the cul-de-sac. The driver was a big guy with a beard, sunglasses, and the calm, unflappable demeanor of someone who's dealt with the worst humans have to offer. He stopped behind Karen's SUV, stepped out, and gave me a small nod. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest. This was it. Karen noticed first. Her smirk faltered. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel like she was bracing for a hurricane. You can't, she shouted before the driver even touched her car. I can, the driver said calmly, tapping the side mirror. This vehicle is blocking a legal driveway, HOA violation, tow-away zone. Karen's face went pale. She tried waving her arms, trying to negotiate, trying to remind the universe who she was. You don't understand, she screamed. I'm HOA president. Not for this driveway, I said casually from the porch, watching her unravel. You broke the rules, plain and simple. She stomped her feet like a toddler denied candy. She yelled something about signatures, petitions, bylaws, and other nonsense I tuned out. All I could hear was the satisfying click of the tow truck hook being prepared. Karen's SUV groaned under the weight of inevitability, the hook latched. And then the slow, glorious lift. I swear time slowed down. The neighbors came out of their houses like extras in a reality TV show. Phones out, eyes wide, popcorn at the ready. Karen screamed, stomped, and flailed, but the hook held. I took a deep breath and stepped back. This was perfection. Not chaos, not destruction. Justice. The tow truck driver gave me a thumbs up. Karen's face had gone from furious to horrified to utterly defeated. Her clipboard slipped from her hands. I almost felt bad, almost. She tried to run after the truck. Her sandals slapped against the asphalt in a futile sprint. The truck driver just shook his head. Not my problem, he said. And honestly, it was. I watched as her SUV disappeared down the street. Karen shrieked something incoherent at me. I smiled. A calm, victorious, satisfied smile. It wasn't even about the SUV. It was about everything. All the hours she wasted, all the petty rules, all the domination she tried to enforce in our neighborhood. All gone. The neighbors cheered silently from their porches. Mr. Thompson gave me a slow clap. The Johnson kids screamed in triumph. Even Mrs. Ramirez mouthed, well done. Karen was still screaming in the distance, probably plotting her next ridiculous move. But I didn't care. Not anymore. I sank into my porch chair and finally exhaled. The sun was warm on my face. The day felt lighter. My driveway was mine again. But of course, the story wasn't over. Karen never lets things go that easily. I knew one thing for certain, she'd be back. Petty, furious, dangerous in her own small, bureaucratic way. And next time I'd be ready. Because the lesson had been learned. And this time karma had wheels. I sank into my porch chair, feeling the sun on my face and the sweet, sweet relief of freedom. My driveway, my car, my morning restored. But of course, this was HOA Karen we were talking about. Victory never comes quietly with her. I heard shouting in the distance. Karen's voice carried down the cul-de-sac like an angry foghorn. This is illegal, you can't do this, I am HOA president. Her tone was simultaneously furious and wounded, a combination that would make anyone laugh if they weren't trapped in this mess for hours. Neighbors peeked out again, phones ready. I swear Mr. Thompson had binoculars this time, popcorn in hand. It was like the entire street was watching a live-action reality show unfold. And honestly, I was starting to enjoy my starring role. Karen stomped down the sidewalk, clutching her clipboard, red-faced and steaming like a cartoon villain about to explode. She banged on doors, yelling about petitions, signatures, and bylaws that probably existed only in her imagination. Everyone, this is illegal, you are all witnesses. I took a sip of coffee, grinning, yes, everyone's a witness and they know the truth. From my porch, I could see neighbors shaking their heads at her antics. The Johnson kids were whispering excitedly among themselves. Even Mrs. Ramirez had a smirk that screamed, finally some justice. Karen's SUV was gone, but she wasn't done. Oh no, Karen was plotting. I could feel it in the air, thick and heavy like a storm ready to burst. She glanced at my house, she glanced at my car, then she muttered something under her breath. I didn't hear it, but I knew it was the vow of petty revenge only a Karen could make. I leaned back, shaking my head with a small laugh. She never learns. And then it hit me, the neighborhood had changed. Not in any dramatic, loud way, but in subtle, perfect ways. People walked taller, smiled wider, they whispered about standing up to HOA Karen. The energy had shifted. My victory wasn't just mine, it belonged to everyone who had suffered under her rules and random fines. Still, I couldn't let my guard down. Karen was the type to escalate quietly. She would probably find a new loophole tomorrow, or maybe the next week, or she'd start issuing imaginary fines for things that didn't exist. A grass too green, she might say. Mailbox bending the rules of physics, she might claim. I decided it was worth a little fun to let her stew. I leaned on my car, pretending to be casually wiping fingerprints off the hood, even though I knew she could see me through her window. I wanted her to stew in paranoia, imagining that maybe I had one more move left. By mid-afternoon, the tow truck driver had left, leaving behind a satisfied grin and the sound of his engine fatting into the distance. I waved at him. You just saved my morning and possibly my sanity, I said. Karen, meanwhile, retreated into her house, banging her clipboard against the door as if trying to summon some bureaucratic vengeance from the universe. She slammed it shut, and I could see the curtains twitching like she was plotting her next move. I sighed and sat back. Freedom was sweet, but victory even sweeter. I started laughing quietly to myself. This wasn't just about a car or a driveway. It was about principle. It was about justice. It was about knowing that petty little Karen couldn't ruin my life or anyone else's without consequences. And somewhere deep inside me, I knew she'd be back. She always came back. But the difference this time, I was ready. I had rules, loopholes, witnesses, and a small army of popcorn-wielding neighbors ready to watch the show. As the sun began to set, painting my street golden, I realized something important. Karen's tantrum might be loud, chaotic, and exhausting, but it didn't define the neighborhood. We did. And today, we all got a reminder that no one, not even HOA Karen, could completely control us. I leaned back and whispered to myself, a sly grin spreading across my face. Enjoy your quiet, Karen, because the next time you mess with me, it's going to be even better. The next morning, the street was calm, too calm, almost suspiciously so. I stepped outside, stretching, coffee in hand, expecting at any moment to see Karen storming down the street with a new rule, a new clipboard, or most likely, a new tantrum. But there was nothing. For once, HOA Karen was absent, her SUV gone, her clipboard missing, even the faintest trace of her fury evaporated. I took a slow breath, letting it fill my lungs. Freedom tasted sweeter than coffee, louder than laughter, and somehow sharper than every grievance she'd ever hurled at me. Neighbors started emerging from their houses, peeking out cautiously. Mr. Thompson gave a nod of approval. Mrs. Ramirez waved with a triumphant smile. Even the Johnson kids, now experts in recording neighborhood drama, gave me thumbs up. It was subtle, quiet acknowledgement, but it felt like a small victory parade. I leaned against my car and let my mind wander. What had I learned from all this chaos? First, patience isn't just a virtue, it's a weapon. Karen thrived on impulsive reactions, on frustration, on panic. The second I stayed calm, calculated, and strategic, I took the power back. Second, rules aren't just rules, they're armor. I hadn't needed to yell, fight, or threaten. I had simply followed the rules, the very same rules Karen thought she owned, and watching her crumble under the weight of her own obsession, priceless. Third, humor saves lives. At some point, you have to laugh. Laugh at the ridiculousness, the absurdity, the over-the-top tantrums. It keeps your sanity intact when someone is busy trying to destroy it. I glanced down the street, half expecting Karen to appear, clipboard raised like a sword. But the street was quiet, peaceful, almost peaceful enough that I wondered if it had been a dream. Then, just as I was sipping my coffee, I noticed a familiar shape moving slowly down the cul-de-sac. Karen, of course. She wasn't storming, she wasn't yelling. She was walking, clipboard under her arm, head down, a tiny flicker of awareness in her eyes. Something had shifted, something she wasn't used to feeling: defeat. She passed my house, muttering under her breath. I didn't respond, I didn't wave, I just smiled. Because the battle had been won. And yet part of me knew this wouldn't be the last. Karen had energy, obsession, she would come back, she always did. But now I was ready. I had the binder, the witnesses, the rules, the perfect plan, and the confidence. Confidence that no SUV, no clipboard, no imaginary bylaw could ever trap me again. I walked around my driveway, inspecting it like a general surveying the battlefield. My car was safe. My space was mine, my sanity mostly intact. The only casualties, Karen's pride and hours of her morning spent failing spectacularly. I chuckled quietly to myself. Some people just don't know when to quit, I whispered, and some people just need a tow truck to remind them of reality. The neighbors gave me small waves as they passed, subtle acknowledgments of my triumph. Even in a suburban cul-de-sac, victories mattered, especially small, perfectly legal, hilariously satisfying victories. I returned inside, feeling lighter than I had in days. I poured myself another coffee and leaned against the counter. My driveway looked peaceful. The street looked peaceful. Even Karen's imaginary rules seemed to shrink back into oblivion. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the story of today would be told and retold in our neighborhood for months. People would whisper about the time HOA Karen blocked a car, underestimated the homeowner, and got, well, what she deserved. I smiled and raised my cup in a quiet toast to myself. To patience, to strategy, to justice served the proper way, and to HOA Karen, may her future tantrums always meet the perfect countermeasure. Because that's the thing about karma, I realized. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be cruel. It just has to be precise. And this time it was perfect. The street was quiet, my car was free, and for once I felt like the neighborhood wasn't just mine to live in, it was mine to enjoy. HOA Karen might be plotting her next move, and maybe one day she would strike again. But for now, victory, sweet, satisfying, perfectly legal victory. And me. I was just going to sit back, sip my coffee, and enjoy it. Every HOA has a story on HOA Headaches. You'll hear the ones they tried to bury. Subscribe today.